flowers. You don't see very many flowers in this picture, but also how the birch trees and other trees that I'll show you later, how they're usually limbed up or pruned up so that you get sunshine underneath so that you don't have deep, deep shade. Although there are gardens that you do have deep shade with. This is one where you have very, very dense shade. These are, you guys are probably, a lot of you recognize the lily of the valley. Absolutely wonderful, fragrant plant, but this is what you would incorporate this plant in if you were using it. It's going to be one that is on a hillside where you don't care, where you can let it go and just let it be a dense, deep shade ground cover. Because if you plant it next to other cute little plants and you think they're all going to cohabitate together, it's not the case. This is an ugly thug that will really eat up everything else. So it's a good one for the practice if you've got, you know, something like this where it's a big garden area. This was up north, and if you remember, you see all the pine trees up there, and if you go back to your history books, remember the American history, I think my great uncles were in the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and they were the guys who planted all these pine trees. And so when you go up north, you'll see rows and rows and rows of pine trees. And look what you see there. Everything is like limbed up. It's, you know, the plants, there are plants that reseeded lower down, but you've got a lot of dense shade. And so, you know, incorporate different things like what they did with bottle trees, benches, fountains, container pots. We do use a lot of container pots in different things as well. So, and they, believe it or not, they do have enough sunlight for grass seed there and for grass to grow. So these are all things you're looking at, how your whole microclimate, how your whole garden fits together. And that's what we're going to be showing you. Disadvantages of dense shade. When you have low branches like this, number one, when you're out there and you're going to weed underneath there, I guarantee you, I still have flashbacks of going under different trees and hitting my head when I go to stand up. It just happens all the time. So if it's possible to kind of limb those plants up and still keep the integrity of the tree, that's what happens a lot of times is you lose the integrity of the tree. You don't want that, but if you can also limb them up, that lets not only more sunlight underneath, but also lets rainwater and rain go under those plants to water them. Hostas are great plants, and we talk about them a lot. You know, everybody knows what a hosta is, but a hosta is kind of bad for itself because it's like a big umbrella that stops water from coming to it too. So you kind of help those things along all your plants to make them the best they can be so that they don't be susceptible later to bugs and diseases and insects. Dry soils is another disadvantage of very dense shade because you've got competition with other plant material and roots. This is an awesome picture. This is over at Meadowbrook Gardens, and there's, oh my gosh, it's just a whole other thing to talk about, but great place to go. Over 100 gardeners over there that volunteer their time. But when you're looking at this, slide, what they did was awesome because the big tree on the right is limbed up tall so that sunlight and water can get underneath it. And then they've got periodically like trees like spread out wider apart so that they're not dense and taking up a lot of airspace for the plant. So you've got good air circulation. One of the ladies before was talking about cedar apple rust. Part of that is a good air circulation issue as well. Forget that for now, but going back to this, we're looking at like the golden hackcone grass on both sides there. Grouping plants together is easier to water and to get water to. And then what you're also seeing with this is this dry riverbed pushes water to where you want it to go. What you can actually do is have the water, if you know it's coming down this slope and it's going off to the left and you want to water some plants there, plants that like more moisture, like astilbes, for example, then maybe you leave a couple rocks open so that the water spills over into that area and gives them the extra water they need. So dry soils are really tough on plants. They're not only tough on plants, but they're tough on your worms, all your soil organisms that live in that whole community of soil that keeps that plant growing the strongest it can be. So we've got a whole microsystem, ecosystem going here that we have to pay attention to. And it's a great microclimate that you have in your yard. Rooted plants are tough as well. And so there's things that you have to do with those. You know, if you know you've got shallow rooted plants like spruce trees and pine trees, you don't plant underneath them because plants don't have a chance to grow. But if you plant on the edges and let them grow where they want to, they can kind of coexist that way. Like in a spot like this, this actually was a picture of a now demised ash tree, and it had wider roots that were going out. Ground covers, this started getting all pulled up and changed around, but the ground cover like this sweet woodruff was very, very compatible with it and worked really well together. So there's always ways to make your garden even a little bit better. Better shaded situations are ones like that we were just talking about. This is high shade where it's trimmed up. And right behind the big tree there, this is an oak tree with hostas right underneath. And then right behind to the left of that is a little Japanese maple. Japanese maple are understory plants. They actually always like it better if they get a break from sun during the day. You can plant them in full sun, but then you'll also notice that sometimes by July, August, their leaves get bleached out. They don't look as great. If they get a break, it's almost like you're putting some sunglasses on them. Give them a break, let them have some shade overhead, and I guarantee you the plant will be much better. But limiting the plants up high also makes sure that they all get enough water, air circulation, and everything else. So this is, I love this next picture. This is an open canopy. So what they did here is, here's a dogwood, but look at the shade, the shade textures that are underneath that shows you that sunlight is getting to the plant. So that means air is getting to the plant, water is getting to the plant. Plants are exactly like you and me. They need air, they need water, and they need nutrients. And if they get those, they are so much happier. And even in the shady spots, we can accomplish all those things. So that the dogwood that's a pink flowering dogwood up above. And it's got, and one of the things you have to watch is behind this picture is kind of deceiving. Those are gold thread cypress in front of there. Behind that dogwood is nothing. So there's no ground covers. A lot of times if you have trees and you have too much root competition with other plants, like say this gold thread cypress, if they put gold thread cypress all the way around that dogwood would be fighting for moisture and nutrition as well. So make sure that you always have good air circulation for those plants and moist soils. Obviously, this is a lush garden, so that means there's enough water getting through there. There is a ton of hostas in there. Now, for most of us people in Rochester, this isn't a very good situation because, well, it is for the deer. The deer are just absolutely loving this picture right now because if they were here, they would be in heaven the whole time, just chomping down on those. But, you know, in our situation, in this situation, they don't have deer issues there. But what they have is they did soaker hoses and water that goes underneath the leaves so that they're not even watering the leaves. We'll get into this later with the hostas, but one of the things to understand is like the blue leaf hostas are a great one to add to your texture because look how those colors come alive. It's the white stems of the birch, the blue leaves of the hostas, and then the green and kind of like light chartreuse colors. If you have overhead watering systems on blue leaf hostas, eventually the waxy coating that is on those blue leaf hostas wears down. So if your rain naturally will eventually wear that down. And that's why if you go shopping for blue leaf hostas in August, they're going to be green in any of the nurseries because that waxy coating has broken down. You're going to make that go down faster if you have overhead watering. So with blue leaf hostas especially, and all of them, you want to make sure that you have watering underneath. Hope that makes sense to everybody so far. Acidic soils also This is just at a garden walk I was at, and one of the things I wanted to show you is always be a detective. Always, when you have shady gardens, they're awesome because you get that, especially at the heat of the day, you've got that coolness from, up above from having shade. But also you have to keep an eye out for things. Right in front of this bird bath is an astilbe that's in bloom. And right to the right is a peony. To the left is another, and that green leaf plant that's an enemy. But if you look at the astilbes, they're lighter green in color. You should always be watching your plants. When you buy a plant, look up the information on them. If you're supposed to have a dark green leaf and you look at this astilbe in front and it's light and pale in color, that means it's not getting the nutrients it needs. Part of that could be is that the mulch, when you keep putting down a heavy mulch and a woodier mulch, that mulch actually steals nutrients away from the soil temporarily until it breaks down more, but it does steal nutrients away. So by stealing those nutrients away, that plant doesn't look as healthy. That's when it's more susceptible to problems, maybe insects or diseases attacking it when it's not as healthy. So whenever you're taking your walks through your garden, don't just look at the textures, don't just look at the colors, and don't look at the flowers, but also look at the leaves and let them tell the story to you. If you've got nice, healthy leaves, you've got half the battle won. So that kind of helps you with that. So we're always having fun with this. We're always out there. It's an excuse to be out there and doing something different every day, except today. This is situational shade, which basically means we've got just shade under one tree. And if you kind of even look closely to that tree, and if you can see it, that's a red maple, and those leaves are chlorotic. It doesn't have enough acidity in the soil. So it's not doing as well as it could do. And so the plants that are in front are actually in full sun because they're getting sun from the south hitting toward that. So even though you got a shade tree, remember where that shade is actually coming from. Another situational, you can make up your own little shade gardens. This is right behind me. If you look over my left shoulder, right there, I've got angel's trumpets, and I've actually got a little bit right over here. That is this plant that's that you're seeing in front of you on the top left corner, the white flowers, and then right behind it, I've got more angel's trumpet that are in the yellow flowers. I put these, they're in my house for the winter time, and then they're probably going out tomorrow. I kept them in here today so that we could have this for this talk to see them a little. But you can use them. They can cast shade down on a container like this one in front, which basically has Coleus and some fuchsia gartenmeister, and some parrot speak plant is that little silvery fine textured leaf plant. So you can create your own situational shade gardens as well. It doesn't have to be some big, tall, shady thing. It can be something small, which is great because now there's fairy gardens they have been for quite a while, but fairy gardens, a lot of other different plantings are just as popular now. Structural shade is very predictable. Structural shade is, here we go. Here's a wall built up with a gazebo around it, so it's holding up the vines there, the climbing hydrangea. So nothing is going to change here, which is awesome because you don't have to worry. You know what you can plant and what you can't plant there because there's no roots that are planted underneath that wall. So they're doing a great job that way. Dry overhangs, watch for that. We're looking outside and you're seeing what's doing a runoff from the, from your gutters and things like that. You might find if you go take a walk after it's done raining, we've had torrential rains, we've had a lot of rain, it's heavier now, that later on when you go out after it dries out, check and see where the actual water is. Right up next to the house in a lot of areas where you thought you were getting rain, you're not getting any. And what they're telling you is that don't count on, if you're not getting it now in May, don't count on that in July when it's the hottest part of our season. And if you can't count on it, those plants can't get that either. So, and also the other thing to remember is that when you're looking at a house, if you've got brick and you've got brick mortar. Mortar is made and it has alkaline in it. And so that actually, as it wears down, it releases into the soil as well. So a lot of times next to your home, your soil is more alkaline, and typically we like a little bit more acidity. These hollies in front of that are doing great. They have a nice dark green color, so they're happy, and that's your cue. You're watching how those plants are doing. If they're doing great, then you know that there's enough nutrients for them. I hope we're doing all right so far, and I'm not zooming through two things. It's kind of fun to do this, so sometimes I get a little carried away.
I think you're doing a great job, Sue. Everybody seems content, and I have one question for you. Can you use holly tone on a Japanese maple?
Yes, you can. Absolutely. You probably can. Holly tone is a slow release fertilizer. And don't forget that where you're putting that, where for any plants, but Japanese maple specifically, say your Japanese maple is 10 feet out. Well, your feeder roots that are actually taking in those nutrients are farther out. They're at the drip line of where that tree, where those branches come around that outside, that's where the drip line of the tree is, and that's where those feeder roots are. So when you're putting holly tone down, you want to make sure that you're putting it where those roots are, or where you think, if it's a young plant, you put it closer to the trunk. If it's an older established plant, you're putting it farther away. So holly tone, I believe it has right on the directions, like, you know, how many cupfuls per inch diameter of the plant. So you can read it up that way. But basically it's an organic material, so you really can't overdo it unless you really do, unless there's really a problem. But typically you won't overdo it. So holly tone's a great thing because it's slow release.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Structural shade, there's a lot of different influences as well. And when you can look around and you can find structure in places you never even thought. It can be a very, very hot day. You can be out in the middle and looking at gardens, and if you really, really need some shade, you can find it. I had to put this in. These were people on a garden walk. This was up in Frankenmuth, and it was so hot. It had to be like 95 degrees. And I turned around and I looked, and they were all standing in the shade of the telephone pole. So if you want to find some shade, you can find it somewhere. So just had to add a little bit of humor there. That's all. Pruning up, limbing up. This was actually taken up north and stuff. I just thought it was a cool picture. It was on a golf course, but this is showing, you know, what you want to do is like this is a crabapple that's on the left closest to us. This is something, look how it's giving a little bit of shade. It's shading the areas that you want it to, but it's also limbed up high enough so that water, hopefully rainwater, can get underneath there. So that's what you're looking at. A lot of times people are afraid to trim things up. It's not a bad idea. The main thing I said is, you know, boy, I hate to knock the workers that cut by the telephone lines, but sometimes they just destroy the integrity of the plant material. And you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that as you're make sure you've got somebody with you. A lot of times when you're looking, we always work in pairs together. Now we've social distance 6 feet apart, but we're looking at the plant and saying, okay, you know, how would it look if I take this branch out? Because you can't glue it back on later. So you make sure that you're happy with your decision before you cut that plant. Thinning them out. In this area, they had a lot of plants, a lot of trees, saplings that had grown up in between things. And so they pulled them out. And look at the coarse textures of the hostas, make this garden stand out. They also have fine textures back farther. And so it kind of, you know, if you start looking at different things, they didn't have too many hostas, but basically look what they're doing. They are leading you through the garden right at the front. They've got stepping stones. And so that's going to tell you where you want to go. But the hostas also are like the beacons that say, hey, come on and follow me this way and go around this way. And they are just taking you through this garden, whether you realize it or not. And that's how you want your gardens to be. You don't have to rely totally on plant material. Look at these spruces here. These are Norway spruces. You can always tell Norway spruces because their branches like really drape down. I mean, you couldn't tell a Norway spruce from a mile away. Driving down the street and you see a big tall tree and all these branches are going like that, you know it's a Norway spruce. But look at right there by the Norway spruce, nothing can grow underneath there because the roots are so fine and so right below the surface. When we have tornadoes, different things, and you notice like a pine tree or a spruce tree or something goes down, you can almost visualize it. That plant goes down, and it's amazing how that root system is compared to what the size of the tree is. So you know that root system is not going to be very hospitable to any other plants growing underneath it. So don't try to use that. Instead, use stepping stones, different stows, and again, try to move the water where you want it to go to the plants that need that moisture the most. This is just a fun garden. We were doing the landscape lighting for this, so it was a fun one to look at and see how they incorporated different textures. Now, the only thing is that sidewalk, they use the river rock, not sidewalk, but the walk that they use the bigger round stones, and then they also use river rock. River rock is very pretty and it's really nice, but it is a little bit more high maintenance in a way that you have to make sure you kind of level it out, because you can twist an ankle on it if it's like crooked and stuff. So in the spring, after we've had a lot of freezes and thaws in the wintertime, go back out there and take like a rubber mallet and just kind of pound down the ones that may be popping up so that you'll be comfortable walking the rest of the year. Give them what they want. Soils need to be loose, and if you've got compacted soils underneath certain trees, try to just take a pitchfork, just take anything and try to loosen that up. Then add organic matter. We talked last week about bumper crop or different organic matters that you can buy or that you can always make compost. Not as easy to do, but you can do that. Add organic matter to the soil. That's going to help it up. And make sure that you give water to the plants and microorganisms. Right now, we don't have to worry about it, but in the heat of the summer, even though those shade trees are shading the plants, they still need moisture to grow. And fertilizer, we talked about that a minute ago. One of the things that on a bag of fertilizer, there's 3 numbers. There's one for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So the potassium is the 3rd number. Make sure that you've got a good amount of potassium when you're fertilizing shadier plants. They seem to utilize that better and it helps them grow. So don't have like if you get like say a 12, 12, 12 or something, if you're doing a higher granular, go ahead, just make sure that last number is high because that will help them. Okay, now we're getting into some of the plants here. And I'm first gonna do some, this is Maidenhair Fern, awesome. In Greek, the word adianum, which is the botanical name, it means no wetting or no wetted. So basically what happens if you look at the leaves of this plant, when it rains, the water just kind of trickles down off that plant and then goes down into the soil. And because it's kind of an open plant, it's pretty cool that way. All ferns, deer don't really bother. So bonus as far as that goes. So make your ferns be the best. Don't just go out and buy ferns just to have one. Make them be the best. And this Maidenhair Fern is definitely one of them. If you look at it close, it's got cool like black stems to it. It's just kind of a neat, very delicate. One for more of an area where like right off of a deck or right off of an area where you could have people stop and look, because otherwise you can walk right by it, and it is a neat plant to enjoy. Kind of on that same venue is the Fringed bleeding heart. And there's different varieties of this. This was Dicentra luxuriant, which is in the handout. There's also one that's called King of Hearts. And then there's one that's called Fire Island that is more red and lasts a lot longer. They bloom in the spring. Well, not yet. They're starting now. But then they'll go through midsummer. If they get enough water, they keep growing. If they don't get enough water, they a lot of times will go dormant, and so will the old-fashioned bleeding heart as well. So that's the key. If you start noticing them dying out, and by midsummer, it's because they don't have enough moisture, and they, to protect themselves, they just go dormant that way. Japanese painted fern, I think, are an awesome plant because look how bright that is. It's a fern. Deer don't like it. It's nice and bright. It lightens up an area. So this is a great one for, you know, especially even at night. The moon glows at night, shimmers on it, and it's just a really, really picture. This is Godzilla, which is a bigger version of that. So that one gets 3 to 4 feet, but it still brightens up an area pretty tall. So there are a couple different varieties, but I think it's an awesome, of the ferns, Maidenhair and this Japanese painted is definitely great ones to use. The astilbes, astilbes are a great one, but they need moisture, and so they like a soil that's more of an organic soil. So you can always top dress them in the springtime with compost. Deer don't bother these. And I think the key to stilbes, because they are a very cool, a neat plant for shadier spots, is they come in early season, mid-season, and then late season varieties. So take your time and go, when you go shopping for them, read the tags well, talk to the salespeople out there because there's a lot of different varieties, and get early season, early, mid, and late so that you get to enjoy them all. Great ferny texture, neat ones to have. So astilbes are fun. They like more moisture. They definitely are. These are called fairy candle. Or this.
Sue, can I interrupt you for just a moment?
Sure. Yep.
Because I think this could go with your last slide. Linda has a question. She says, do ferns start to take all over a certain space?
Yes, it depends on which ones. They grow by underground rhizomes. And let me show you in a minute. Okay. In 2 more, there's one coming up, and let me just hold that and I'll show you right then. So
okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. So this is one that is a mid-season and a late season bloomer. So this one blooms a little bit later. So that's like a really nice one that way. This is Semisafuga that kind of looks like that, but it's called Bugbane. This is also lesser known as fairy candles. This is the green leaf version. This guy can get pretty tall, like 4 feet, but kind of a neat one. It's almost like, you know, you're adding like a little candelabra into a garden space. Does very, very well. If there's light, too much light coming from one way, it will kind of lean toward that. So kind of either have to stake it or put it in an area where it's, you know, going to be happy where it's at. There are burgundy leaf versions of this. This is brunette. There is also one that's called Chocoholic, which is, people will buy it just because of the name. That one can get 4 to 5 feet tall. And there's also Black Hillside Beauty that can get 4 to 7 feet. So it can be really, really tall. I did notice my deer nibbling on that one a little bit last year, which I was a little upset about because they hadn't before. So I think they're kind of walking a little bit different pattern, but I think I've straightened that situation out for this year. We shall see. Here's a good example. This is royal fern, and royal fern is a nice plant if you got an area where you can just let it go. But yes, it will run and it will spread by stolons, underground stolons, and then new clumps pop up. We had this at a client's house that we took care of, that we just had to stay on it and keep digging up the clumps and everything and the roots. And actually, after a day like today, when it's moist and you can get out there and you can pop them up and pull all the roots out, because the roots just keep going. They're black and they're fine, and they keep running. So you have to stay on top of it. Don't just think you did it once and you got rid of it. Otherwise, just try to keep it in place. This is royal fern. It's going to probably get about 4 feet. It's a neat plant as far as the fronds on it and everything, but it is a runner. So is like you know, a lot of the other ones will run. So what I'm trying to show you is more, it should say clump fern on it, or a runner if you're shopping. Medium textures, when I'm going to people's houses and they ask me about design, they just don't like something about a design. A lot of times they have more medium textures than anything else. And so it's great to kind of make combinations and watch what you're doing. Don't have too many medium textures. You need the fines and the coarse to bring everything together. Chocolate chip ajuga, not only because of the name, but it's also, I love the texture of this plant. Burgundy leaves, and they get more burgundy as the spring goes on. Just a really nice, neat, solid plant. And you can see how dense it is. It's slow growing, but you don't have really weeds going through it. This is a little bit larger ajuga, and this was Sedum angelina, which is an awesome plant for giving you that chartreuse color in a shade garden. Look at the color combination you get between the two, and it looks very, very nice. And then these I call my safety factor plants. This is the Lamium. Lamium is in the lavender or the mint family. And in the mint family, they all have square stems. You grab a mint, you hold it, and you'll feel definite square stems to it. Usually those in the mint family are going to be more runners. They are going to spread a little bit faster. So what you need to do with these is, but these Lamiums are pretty tame. This one, Orchid Frost, awesome plant, but look at, most of the leaf is light creamy in color and then just green edges. Starts blooming in April and will bloom till it starts getting hotter, and then kind of sporadically in the summer. This is pink Chablis, which has the pink flower to it. Now you can see like the leaf a little bit better on it. But in a darker garden, and if you're walking through a shady garden in a darker area, this is a nice one because you can, it brightens up an area and it's just a low ground cover. White Nancy is also a great one that just has the white flowers to it. So those are good ones. There are better varieties. Those I would say are the better varieties to use. Pink Chablis, White Nancy, those are great ones also to use. This European wild ginger, I love this plant because of the shiny green leaves that it has to it. It's a slow spreader, so if you want to, it likes heavy shade. It's got like kind of like chocolate flowers that actually hang underneath, so you really don't even see them that much, or maroon color probably would be better to say. But look how it kind of, you know, softens up that rock. Just a neat one, and it's a fun one to use. It spreads very slowly, but eventually you can dig it up and move it into different spots. Does well, it'll complement hostas well, it'll complement ferns, complements a lot of plant material, so fun one to use. Now, Cardinal Flower is native to North America, and the one I show you here is this spot. Actually, the history behind this on the right, where you see the that grass right in front is called Ice Dance. It's a carex. This isn't a lot of shade, but this is also at the edge of a river bank. And this was at a client's house that we have. Well, actually they moved, so we're not there anymore, but this house, it flooded every spring. And so what we did is we used heavier stone and then a lot of stepping stone that you can see at the top of there to hold everything in place. And this Cardinal Flower and the grass did great there, because that's a carex, so they do great in wetter soils. Cardinal Flower is not a long-lived plant, so don't feel bad if it doesn't make it after a spring, it just doesn't come back. Don't take it personally, just go out and get another one. It's just, they're a great plant. They like shade, they like moisture soils, and they come in a couple different colors. The main thing is the burgundy leaf plants. If you buy burgundy leaf, they do not live as long as the green leaf plants. So just kind of keep that in mind, but the colors are more prominent in the burgundy leaves. So for something fun for a couple of years, go ahead and get that one, but really neat plant, fun one, and the hummingbirds love it too. So another bonus. One of my absolute favorite, the golden hackcone plant, Heuchera cloa is the botanical name. There is a variety called all gold that gets about a foot tall. These plants can be a workhorse in a shade garden. They can just, you could use them as weavers. I'm going to show you in some more pictures here when we get into garden design a little bit. So really, really fun plants to use. Great one. I can't say enough about it. Look at how this in a garden, just boom, you can just take it all the way along a garden, and it could just lead you just like stepping stones can. It looks like a little claustrophobic, doesn't it? Something needs to be pruned back there a little bit. But other than that, awesome. Impatiens, here's the question. In a shade gardening class, do we have impatiens? Absolutely. The shade impatiens are finally coming back. We've had substitutes like the New Guineas, different other plants that we've used as substitutes for them, Coleus. But now for 2020, there's a new series out that's the Beacon series. And I think almost everybody knows it's a gardener, is that downy powdery mildew attack these, and they would be doing fine. And then in August, boom, they would just die on you. And it was from the downy mildew problem, and they were taken off the market for years. And now they're back with some stronger varieties. So you don't have to be afraid with them. So try some of the new ones, maybe not in huge groups yet, see how they do, but I think you'll be happy with them. So Beacon is one of the new ones that's coming out. My favorites, I got a lot of favorites. And if somebody asked me to name my 10 favorites, I would say, okay, and after 100, I'll stop because there's tons of favorites. But fuchsias are one of my absolute favorites. And I have an area in my back off of my deck that we've got 2 trees, and then I hang the fuchsias off of the trees so that all the hummingbirds come in, and it's like your own little slice of heaven. You could just sit there, watch the hummingbirds come in. There's a lot of different kinds of fuchsias. In fact, my daughter gets me a new fuchsia every day for Mother's Day, or for Mother's Day every year. We go shopping and get a new one or a couple new ones. Black cherry was last year's version, and I overwintered them in the house. I have 3 pots that overwintered and they went out a couple days ago, and they're very happy. And the hummers finally saw mine yesterday. So anyway, those are hanging ones on the left, like the black cherry. The Gartenmeister is a really cool one. I love using this one for pop of color. It's one you can put in a container. Maybe gets about, I don't know, a foot tall. And it has those orange flowers that hang down. Just a really, really, really cool plant. So fuchsias are great. Go ahead and use them and have a lot of fun with them. And our final kind of textures are the coarse textures. This is the bleeding heart. This is gold heart. Dicentra spectabilis. I don't know how everybody's did this year. The leaf will be awesome. From the frost that we had last week, a lot of the flowers took a hit, which we haven't done that in quite a while, but that happens. You could run out and covered it up, or you might just not get the flowers for this year, but you will definitely have that golden leaf. It brightens up an area just awesome. It's just a great plant to have. A little bit more expensive if you go shopping, but definitely well worth it. Another one that can brighten up. Now this is going to be partial shade. It can't go in deep shade, doesn't really like full sun. It'll be there, but it won't be as happy. But the Heucheras or the coral bells, this is Snow Angel, blooms for a long period of time, and the hummingbirds love those little tiny bell flowers to them. There's a ton of different varieties out there, the coral bells. Another long bloomer is Berry Timeless, Berry Timeless. That's a really cool one too. I just realized that, on TV, you can go and you can put reverse and pause and then go back and see what the person said. And I'm like, bing, 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 through it all this. So I will stop. If anybody has any questions on things like that, go ahead and I can review them later too. So. Okay.
Well, we have some questions. I don't know if it relates to exactly what you're talking about. Is now a good time, or do you want to wait till the end?
Let's go. I drank my water. I'm good.
All right, you're ready. Okay, Marcia wants to know how to fertilize dogwoods.
How to fertilize dogwoods. You're watching the leaf color to make sure that they even need it. A lot of shrubs and trees, once they're well established, their root zone is out so far that they might not even need it. But dogwood, if anything, would again like more acidic, and I would do the exact same thing that we talked about with the Japanese maple. I would use like a holly tone, something a little bit more acidic. Try to get out. Now is a good time. Now, spring and then summer, and then that's it. If they're not doing well, and you want to establish them and get them even stronger, now go out today, and when there's a break in the rain, and then the water will wash it into the soil. Holly tone around the drip zone, so around the drip line, farther out where you think those feeder roots are. Drop it like in, cups around that area, and it'll be very happy. Do it again in late June, and then you're done. You're not doing anything else, because believe it or not, you want it. If you did it again, like in say August, September, then it might not have enough time to harden off for winter. So spring.
Okay. Oh, does somebody have their button unmuted? Yep, that's okay. Okay, so we have a question from Ginger. My garden seems to have a lot of very fine roots in the soil. This makes it hard to weed and plant. Any suggestions?
Good luck. You know what? Your best bet when you think about when you've got that. I assume that's from a tree or something, or some shrubs that are coming out that you've got the roots from there. If you go and you cut those roots, a lot of times the roots will multiply. And so it makes the problem even worse. So what you try to do, like say in shade garden areas, is maybe, like if you want to, okay, you've got this snow angel and you want to plant it in that spot, and you dig the hole and you find a lot of roots. If you can just try to dig the hole wider and push the roots to get them going someplace else. And do it that way, and then plant the plant in that spot. Try not to overdo it. By cutting and everything else, you're actually discouraging, you're encouraging more roots. And just pull it back and plant the plants farther back. And again, now you're using things like in the spots where you've got too many fine roots, then you're using things like stepping stones and that kind of things, inorganic type project, things that will work better. But you can find that happy medium. And even like with the ground covers, if you plant ground covers that have low, small roots, you can plant those in those spots and let them decide and grow where they want to grow.
All right, that's great. Vicky asks, is there a perennial, oh, that's for me, sorry. Okay, Vicky, that's a great idea. What she asked me is if we ever considered having a plant exchange here at the OPC, and I think it's genius. I have a ton of lily in the valley, and my girlfriend just said, oh, I'm going out to get some lily in valley, and I'm like, stop, I can dig you up a ton. So that's a really good idea. Okay, so Gretchen asks, what about ferns that go brown in late summer?
Yeah, those ferns. They do that a lot, and they'll just they look great in the spring, and then a lot of them the wind will hit them, and they will just break and snap, and they'll go brown and things. If you like them and they're doing well, otherwise just go ahead and cut those branches off that are looking bad, or else dig them up and start with new stuff. Before I used to try to save everything I could, and do everything that I could for plants and everything. Now I just figure if I'm always going to have that same problem every year, there are so many new plants that are coming out. There's so many new varieties. Maybe it's time to move on and try a Japanese painted fern. It doesn't do that. Try a different fern, but you're going to have to make sure that you got all those other ones out first. So sometimes that's a bigger project than you think, and you have to pull them out and then wait a couple weeks, watch what else pops up, wait a couple weeks and do it that way. But
okay, one more question, we'll get back on your presentation. Cheryl asked, do squirrels bother the fuchsia?
Not really. I've had more things with a chipmunk jumping in a basket or something like that than I have with squirrels. So I haven't seen it. No, and I've had mine up there for years. So
okay. Wonderful. You're all caught up on your questions, so we can continue on your presentation. Thanks, Sue.
Okie doke. This is a very interesting plant. It's one that is not, you're seeing it more in the stores now. This is Mukdenia. This is Crimson Falls. It starts out green. It only gets maybe 12 inches at the most. So you can see it with hostas, how it's kind of dwarfed there. It starts out green with white starry flowers. And then as the season goes on, it gets redder and redder and redder. And then by fall, it is like a beautiful deep red fall color. Really, really cool plant. It's like another one of those where it's like an up close plant to really appreciate it. Like you don't put it in the back of your garden or something like that. But you want something really unique, this would be one to try. Put a star next to that one. Here's your lily of the valley. Fragrance is phenomenal, but it does spread and spread and spread. So just remember where you put it, you got to let it go, and otherwise it's going to be a maintenance issue. But otherwise it's low maintenance because you don't have to do anything else. No weeds go through there. Lenten rose, these guys are such a spring harbinger. They come in and they actually start blooming a lot of times in March. The thing that you have to remember about these is why they can do that is because the original plants, the flowers all face down. And because of that, when it snows, the snow just falls right off of them. Now they've kind of hybridized them more so that more of the flower can look up at you, but then that kind of makes them bloom a little bit later. Deer do not bother these plants at all. They're a phenomenal plant. They've got a great evergreen leaf the rest of the season. In the springtime, if you see them and you've got, and they've got brown spots on them, just cut them off and they'll set out new leaves. So a really, really neat plant. People are really getting into these. So hellebores are a great plant to try. And then these are caladiums. Here's a far up picture, and then here's a close up. There's caladiums come in a lot of different colors. What I will tell you about these the most, if people have problems with them, the thing is they need warm soil. Don't go out and buy those today or tomorrow or this week and it gets up to 80 and you plant them right away, because that soil is still cool from all the rain and cold that we've had. And if you have a clay soil, it's even colder than a warm soil, than a sandy soil, because it takes longer for that cold to go through. So wait until that soil really warms up. Otherwise they'll just sit there and they might even just rot and die out. So if you have problems with them, that's the thing. Put them in a pot, you don't have that issue. Speaking of, okay, Coleus comes in a million different colors. We were talking about this last week. I think that I like this one that's dipped in wine because I can do a lot of different designs with it, because it's got the chartreuse and the burgundy to it. I can play a lot of different plants off of it. But this one is great. The Coleus, if you buy the ones that are like $4 for a pot or something like that, those ones you can put in sun and shade. Ones that are cheaper, like comes in the flats, typically those are only shade loving plants. So that's kind of a clue for you if there's nothing else. But lot of different varieties. I bought electric lime the last couple of years. I really like that. This variety, I'm not sure, it's up at the top there, but it went really well with this combination with the asparagus ferns there and the begonias. So neat plants. The Coleus are great. This Coleus Gaze Delight, that is the chartreuse one with the burgundy leaves. When you really get into planting and putting colors together, you grab one plant and you look at it, and that plant, you look at that chartreuse one, and it's got the chartreuse leaves and the burgundy veins. And then you go and you find a plant that's got burgundy veins to it, like this Persian Sheild does, and look at how well those two complement each other. The chartreuse brightens up the Persian Sheild, and the Persian Sheild makes everybody gets just really stand out. So you put two plants together, you have not one flower in that picture, but it's a beautiful picture. So a lot of when you're shopping and you're looking at the Coleus, play that color echoing. It's the best thing to do. Play color echoing off of that plant to match your other plants, like this Persian Sheild does the best in partial shade. Persian Shield's on the left there. If it's in full sun, it's going to get sunburn. But like this, it works great. Jack Frost, I got a few more here, and then we're going to go into design a little bit, so hang on. And then I'm also going to do a few shrubs, and we're also going to do a couple trees too. So Jack Frost, great one. Perennial forget-me-not, it's also called. Bronera, it's called alkanet. Springtime blooms these blue flowers. Great plant, really neat one to use. This is one in area that it's got a lot of a sandier spot here, and it will kind of wilt if it gets too much sun, but then it pops back up. But that's really because it's got, you know, sand and sun. If it's got the water, it's fine, and it never wilts. Great, great plant, good one for gardens. Aruncus, the goatsbeard, is kind of like a large version of a stilby. Doesn't need as much water. This guy is 4 or 5 feet tall. Misty lace is an awesome one, more closer to 2 feet. The thing with this one is it blooms earlier, is a fuller plant. Really, really nice one to use. I would highly encourage this one. It's Misty lace is an awesome. And then I also have this one. This is Dwarf Goatsbeard. It hasn't gotten any bigger. This is a true dwarf. I've had it for probably 20 years and it's never gotten any bigger than this. So really, really nice fine texture for your little fairy gardens, for your things like that. Nice one to accent things. Solomon seal and Virginia bluebells. Here's the bluebells opening up. The Solomon seal is unfurling right at us. And then this is what it looks like. Solomon seal is awesome because the plant goes up and then it goes horizontal, and it's got variegated leaves to it. Great in a shade garden. Let it go. The botanical name is Polygonatum. Poly meaning many, and gonu means leaves. And so that kind of describes the roots of the plant. They're like knees that spread out, but it's an easy one to control. It's not one that overdoes it. This picture could have been taken yesterday if it wasn't raining. The trillium are out, the ferns are popping up, and everything is about the same as now. So cool plant. For something with a coarse texture, larger one, this is Rocket Ligularia, which does wilt in the heat of the summer. The leaves will like flop down and then pop back up and when it gets cooler at night. But look at how it brightens up that area. Just bright yellow flowers, really, really tall. They also have bottle rocket that is smaller and the leaves are thicker and don't flop down as much. So that'll help. Here's your hostas. Main thing with hostas, while you're fertilizing your dogwoods and while you're fertilizing your Japanese maple, get out there and fertilize your hostas with something like a chicken manure that's got a little bit more and higher nitrogen, and make sure that it gets watered in. That's when those leaves stay thicker. That's when they're less susceptible to slugs and other issues. So the ones that when you're going shopping, these ones that are cupped and thicker, those are the ones that are stronger ones for that. They're great plants. They work really, really well in the garden. There's a lot of different varieties. One of my favorite that looks like this, I don't have it in here, but it's called Fragrant Bouquet. Oh my gosh, the fragrance, it gets like a gardenia fragrance in like August with the flowers, maybe July, August, and just a phenomenal. Guacamole is another one that does that. There's a lot of the hostas. There's a lot of really, really, really neat ones, but the key to a hosta more than anything else, and this is really never mentioned. This is a secret between us. I'm not going to tell anybody else, and you just don't tell anybody else either. The secret is with hostas is wind. If they are in a windy site, it weakens them. They dry, they're not as strong, their leaves are not as thick, and it's called turgid, where it holds moisture. If it's in a windy site, they are in a weakened condition. And by midsummer or late summer, they never do as well. Deer are a problem too, but that's another issue. So with the hosta, try to keep them in an area where they're more protected from wind. And also give them enough space so that, you know, that, and fertilize. Give them like a chicken manure, something with a slow release nitrogen. You can do blood meal too, but then sometimes animals kind of smell that and want to go dig it up and stuff. So I like it, but I stay away from that. So chicken manure, I think works a little bit better that way.
Hey, can I interrupt you for just a quick second?
Yep.
Okay, it's 11 o'clock, so some people are going to have to go off. I just want everyone to know that this is recorded and we're going to go for another, about 20, 30 minutes, right?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. And so let's cover these questions.
Okay.
Bo asked, is there such a thing as too much mulch under a maple tree? I keep on adding every year and now there are roots popping through the mulch. I live in Rochester Hills, so maybe the clay soil is the issue, question mark?
Great question. No, no, the roots of any plants, a root is like this wide, and then as the plant gets older, it gets thicker. And so people think it's growing up, but it's just getting thicker. Your main thing is when you're mulching, you can mulch them, that's not an issue. But what you want to do is make sure that mulch is never up against the trunk of the plant. You always want to see, you don't want to see a straight stem. You want to see a flare coming out at the base of that plant. If you don't see that flare, pull that away and then keep it. But you can mulch them. I don't think you should mulch more than, a couple inches at the most, because you want to let air get into that soil. You could kind of think of it as your mulch is like shutters on your house. And if you're like wooden shutters that would close up and they won't let that air through, if it's too thick and it's too solid, you want to be able to make that air go through there so that it gets down to the roots of the plant. So too thick, yes, that can be a problem. It's just a detriment because it's not getting enough air. So that's your best bet is go light, but just decorative and not overdo it, and make sure that there's always a flare at the base of every tree. If it looks like a telephone pole, you did it wrong and you got to pull it away, because eventually that mulch sits next to that stem and it rots it out. It rots it out. The plant you'll blame it on a tornado or something like that knocked it over. But in reality, it was us putting mulch around it the whole time that rotted that out. And eventually the plant gets weakened and just breaks. So.
Okay, the next question is from Jackie, and she says, do the deer like lily in the valley?
No, I wish they did. No, I haven't seen that. No, I don't think I've never had deer bother it, so I don't think, no.
Yeah, somebody told me that it was dangerous, like for animals to be around lily in the valley.
Lily of the Valley has red berries, or orange berries that they get like in late summer, and those are poisonous.
Okay.
So you want to make sure that nobody's eating those, especially, but usually the dogs just go through those. They don't even pay attention to them.
Okay.
They are poisonous. So yeah, great point.
Okay, Janet asked, what's a good fertilizer to use for a crab apple tree?
I love all you guys that are asking the fertilizer questions, because that means you're thinking about the food. I mean, the plants are, they need those nutrients. And if you think of, like, you go to the store and you buy this bag of fertilizer and it says it's plant food. It is not plant food. A plant makes its own food. Remember in high school and grade school when we had that whole thing on photosynthesis? The plant's got the leaves. The leaves are the solar collectors. They grab the sunlight and they convert that into sugars and starch. They make their own food. When we're fertilizing, basically what we are doing is we are giving the plants vitamins, and that's what they need to help them make that food. Hope that makes sense, but that's the easiest way to put it. So crabapple trees really don't need much. Once their roots get established, unless you really notice that their leaves are too light in color, and they usually aren't. They're more of a neutral plant. That's not a problem. So because fertilize trees too much, I mean, that can overdo it also. I would just keep an eye on them. And if they're really light in color, then I would maybe add some holly tone or something like that. Again, like out at the drip line. Another great source to somebody to talk to who's awesome with fertilizing and things is Dale and Uncle Luke's. I mentioned this last week too, because if you need somebody to, go in there and you know what the heck the guy is talking about, it's him. He's over, Uncle Luke's is on Livernois, just south of South Boulevard. And he's been there for a long time, kind of quiet, kind of dry, but he knows his stuff and he will tell you what you need to know and he doesn't overdo it. So
All
that,
right,
that
thanks.
would help the most.
Okay. Ginger wanted to know, my Jack Frost quit blooming. Any suggestions?
Just, oh boy, I need the rest of the answer to that. Like, just did it start blooming and then stop, or it never bloomed at all?
You know, after listening to you, you know what I wanted to tell her? Dig it up and plant another one.
You know what? Dig it up and put it someplace else too, because if a plant
Okay.
is happy, it would do that with all plants. If they're not happy, then why leave them in a spot where they're not going to do well?
Okay.
Try them someplace
All right.
else. Yeah, that'll
That's
help.
really good advice.
Oh, Marianne, you can sub for me.
Patricia asks, where can you buy Trillium except at Cranbrook Garden Sale? Is there
That's
a
it.
Cranbrook sale this year?
Yep. You have to go someplace where I know, because that was my answer, was Cranbrook. There are, you know what? I would check with Karen Bovio at Specialty Growers, and she's in Howell. It's Specialty Growers. I think it's specialtygrowers.com. Karen Bovio, you can email her. I know specialtygrowers.com. Check with her, because if she doesn't know, she will tell you. Awesome lady. She would definitely help you out with that. She would be a very good one.
Okay, so Ginger did reply on her question, and she said it bloomed, but for only 1 year. So I think that's good advice to move it and see if it does better in another area.
Absolutely. It's not one that really needs a lot of fertilizer to get it to bloom. It's more that it needs like to be established, it needs that moisture and everything, and a partial shade spot. So try it in another spot would be great. Good.
And then I have one more for you now, and it says, what type of mulch do you recommend, and where can we purchase it in bulk?
I usually use like a double shredded hardwood. I think those are the best ones to use, especially if you need it in bulk. And I like getting it from Janie at Auburn Oaks. I really like them over there, and they're very reliable and stuff, and they always have a really good mulch over there. So I would try them. I would try Auburn Oaks. What is it? Auburn and Adams Road.
Well, thank you very much, and we're looking forward to hearing some more. So go ahead and continue.
All right, we got a few more perennials, and then we're going to do a little design, and then a couple of shrubs and trees. Hang on. I appreciate you being this patient for so long. I got to throw some annuals in because I haven't thrown that many. The Coleus, the Impatiens a little bit. Here's the Rex Begonia with the Coleus. See how many different millions of Coleus there are? The Rex is hanging down below. Main thing with Rex Begonia is don't overwater them. And I hate to say that because then people won't water them at all. But if they get overwatered, sometimes they will get root rot. So keep an eye on that with those. So here's what's so great about texture. Look at, there is not a flower in this except in the upper left-hand corner there. But the textures here, the rocks, remember that boulders are a coarse texture. And then they're playing off of that right behind there. That's it's called Petasites or butter burr. Man, that thing is an aggressive, invasive, big thing. So if you want something that just goes and you don't care, then get that, but otherwise don't do it. But look at the big coarse texture of that, and then the fine leaf textured ferns in front. Those guys work really well, complement each other, off of each other. So great one for texture. This is incorporating it. We're going back to, here's the fine texture, the bold textures of the rocks. Don't forget those, the medium textures. And then look how this blue hosta just, boom, just stands right out. It's just awesome. So keep an eye on the blue ones and fertilize those like now also so that they stay that blue color, and don't overhead water them too much. I apologize for this slide, but I love it. This is a slide. So this is from film camera from 25 years ago. And this picture doesn't exist anymore. So, but it's Maidenhair Fern in the center for that fine texture. The Heuchera grass playing off of it in front. And then the blue hostas on the right. I mean, there's not a flower in there, and look how cool that is. That's what you want to play with. That's what you want to have in a shade garden. You sit down there, you just relax, smell the roses, and then watch those hummingbirds pop in too. So they're not in that picture, but they could be. They're around there somewhere. Same thing with this. You know, now these allium can do in partial shade. In deep shade, they won't do as well. But allium with those, you know, something for a unique color and a shape, eye popping, the hostas behind, and then the Brunera in front, or the those are the Semicifuga brunette in front. Really, really cool picture. This is up in Mackinac. Again, you know, just looking at different textures, but make sure you got the coarse, not too many fines, kind of balance them out, and it'll work well together. This is black mondo grass. Black mondo grass needs its own little kind of niche. It's more protective. It's almost like a zone 6 plant, but that with the ferns, they do really well together. But you know, you think, why am I going to put black in a garden? But black and chartreuse make a good picture. And you can utilize texture to move your eye. This is over at the library over at Telegraph and Lone Pine. And they've got narrow sections, and oh my God, that's a great place to go and check plants out in front. They got great gardeners over there. But look how they use that Heuchera chloa grass, the gold leaves, to just take you through the whole garden. And this gardener is an awesome gardener. This is Judy Partridge, really cool lady. And look what she did. She used the background behind with the wheels, industrial wheels going through the whole thing. And then she's just got different hostas, but it's those gold chartreuse leaf hostas that lead your eye like dot, 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 dot through the garden. Fun thing to do. A few shady shrubs. We're going to wind down here, but a few shady shrubs. This one is one you don't see. You will be the only one in your neighborhood that has this if you get it. It's called red bud hazel. This is the flower or the leaf color of it in the fall, and they almost get like a clear red leaf to them. This is the shrub. It can get 6, 8, 10 feet. And look what it does. It likes a shady spot, and it starts at the top, and it turns red from the top down. It's just a really, really neat plant. It does need moisture, not heavy moisture, but it does like moisture. So it's a cool plant that way. I'm going to tell you that this Fothergilla is a great plant. The only thing I'm not sure about is the fall color. The reason I'm saying that is because every year it's variable. It all depends on what kind of fall we've had. You will see reds like this. You will see some years where it doesn't get much red, and it all depends on the cool temperatures and everything else that hits the plant. But Blue Shadow has blue leaves in the summertime. Partial shade plant is great, and the white flowers in the spring, which is coming out right now. Not too big of a plant either, maybe 3-4 feet tall. This one, Snow Queen, the deer will eat it. I don't know why, but oak leaf hydrangea. But look at the fall color that it has. This is the summer color, or the summer leaves. They get these in June. The flowers, great plant, big flowers, really neat plant, but just keep an eye on it. You might have to spray it because deer will definitely hang around it. This one I think is one of the coolest plants, and it's another one that nobody will have in your neighborhood. This is T. viburnum, and I was looking it up last night. I don't have all the plant material that all the nurseries have, so I don't know who has this right now. But it is a really, Klein Nursery, I looked that one up, and Klein, K-L-Y-N-N, that is a really nice nursery, very reliable, and they have it there. That's the only place I could find it. But this is in September. The leaves are starting to turn red, and the berries on it has white flowers in the spring, just like all the viburnum. And so it's a cool plant, neat one to use. And then just a few trees. Now, these are not trees that give you shade. These are trees that tolerate or like partial shade. And Amelanchier is one of them right now. It's blooming white flowers right now. Usually it's like this, where it's a bushy type plant, multi-stem plant. And then this is the fall color to it. Now, you guys should all know by now that we do landscape lighting, and this is how it looks at night. You light this plant up, and especially in the fall, it is just phenomenal. So it's a really, really cool plant to use.
Do I really like that leadway into next month's presentation? Sue's agreed to come back next month on the 15th. It'll be in our newsletter, and she's going to discuss the magic of night lighting.
Yep. It's one of my favorites because that's where we start. We've been doing lighting for 27 years now. I can't believe it's that long, but I was just doing lighting at my mom's the other day too. So always fun and always changing. And, because what you see in the daytime, at nighttime, there's nothing, and kaboom, and this plant right in front of us is an awesome with the fine texture. Another great one to light up. All the Japanese maples, I said before, treat them as an understory plant, which means they really like it if they get a break from sunshine. If they get full, yeah, you see them in neighborhoods everywhere in full sun. People put them there. But if they're in a partial shade spot, they are just so much happier and they do so much better, and you get better colors to them. If you can add some holly tone to them, they are just happy as a clam, and they're a great plant to go with. So Japanese maples are great, but remember they're understory. And then the last few ones are I got two more here. These are this is Cornus cusa, which is a dogwood. This is Venus. Now Venus, the flowers on this can get 4 inches, maybe even 5 inches. Nice big flowers. Really look at that plant. Just a really cool plant. Nice one to use in a garden. It can get big though. It can get about 20 feet. So it can get a good size. And again, understory where there's kind of a break, where it doesn't get full sun, it's really, really, really happy. And these are the flowers of Cornus cusa, not Venus, but just Cornus cusa. So these are smaller. Then in the fall, it gets like a reddish purple fall color. Wolf eyes, look at how that brightens up. This is in a shady spot in the garden. And look at how that brightens up that whole area. I mean, all you need is a big variegated plant like that, and kaboom, it's like a stop sign. It takes your eye right to that end of the garden and looks at it and says, wow, what is this? And then you start looking all around and you see the hostas, you see anything else that you planted there, but it's a big stop sign, and it's a great plant. And this is the fall color, so not really much, but it gets like a pinkish tinge to it, and works very well. My last one is this Hamamelis, which is witch hazel. Arnold's Promise, I think, is probably one of the best because of the fragrance that it has. That's just the fall color, but it gets this is the flower, so it's not much. But in February and March, when you are dying for something, you can go outside and you can go smell a tree. And this is the tree you're going to go smell. Deer don't bother it. It's an understory plant. It likes being in more of a shadier spot, but it's kind of like one of those unsung heroes that you're happy you put in it. There's another one called Diana, but I think Arnold's Promise of all of them is probably the best. I mean, there's other ones out there too, but that one does very well. So this is my business card, and my thing is that total garden ambience from sunrise to sunrise. I put it in there that way because people say, no, sunrise, sunset. I'm like, no, it's sunrise, sunrise, because there is always something going 24 hours a day. I will be around if you have any other questions, but I so appreciate you coming out here today. And we all had to get into our cars and drive all the way out and get all wet and everything. Look at my fireworks. My fireworks, that's from Tiger Stadium. That was my daughter and my husband did this whole, and my whole family put my office together. And that was a picture.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, I have two more questions for you.
Yep.
One is, where in the world do we buy chicken manure?
Where in the world? That would be an Uncle Luke's thing. You can get a lot of places. I think they might have it. Now, I don't know if they would have it at Bourdain's or not, but I know Uncle Luke's would definitely have it. That would get you over. Uncle Luke's, you know what it looks like. It's just a small little store, and in the fall they have deer carrots out in front, and they got it's just kind of small. He also sells some flowers, but yeah, it's right on Livernois, just south of South Boulevard.
It's interesting. I had told you before, my daughter started an organic farm. just about 25 minutes outside of Charlevoix, and they're growing garlic and they're growing raspberries. And so they this year got a movable chicken coop.
Oh,
And
okay.
it moves across the garden. So I thought that was really funny when we got that
That's
question.
brilliant. That is brilliant. I love it.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
Okay, and the other question is, okay, any recommendations for herbs that prefer shade?
Well, I haven't really thought about, I'm not as much into herbs as everybody else is, but, oh boy, I can't think of any off the top of my, I'm going to have to look that up because I can't.
And Carol checked in with us and she said Bordines has bags, and I'm assuming she's talking about chicken.
The chicken manure?
Manure.
Yeah.
And so one more question. It says,
Okay.
what is the best way to eliminate voles?
Voles like, there's voles and there's moles, and moles are more like go and eat like earthworms and grubs and things like that. And voles are more vegetative that they eat. And they're more in the springtime, especially when there's heavy snows that are sitting in spots around your plants. Usually they kind of like disperse. You usually don't have a problem with, the worst thing you have with voles is usually in the spring. This year you shouldn't have too many problems because we didn't have a ton of snow. They will like congregate under the snow, and then they'll just sit there and they'll eat all your plants and your plant roots. But this year with not as much snow, they weren't as bad. I'm not really sure as to what product, like, if you could use like a castor bean oil type thing and spray on it. That's what you can use for moles, but I'm not totally positive, so I'd hate to throw a guess on that one, because they usually kind of, there's not as much of a problem with them once spring is done. They just kind of go off on their own and they're off into somebody else's yard. So,
well, I'm really excited about your magic of night lighting. I think that's going to be super exciting. That is on the 15th of June at 10 o'clock. And we'll have her back. So, Sue, I'm going to unmute everybody so everybody can just say hi and thank you. And until we meet again. Okay, so everybody's unmuted if you want to say hey or have a question for Sue. We have a few more minutes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great.
Really
Wonderful.
Thank you. This is so much fun.
Today.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so funny to see pictures. Now they're all popping up.
Thanks.
I wanted you to see.
This is,
so you had a total, you had at the highest one for most of the class, you had 82 people.
oh wow.
So that was a big class. So
This is amazing. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me.
Everybody.
It's awesome. I love it.
Thank you.
See
All
you.
right, I'll be sending out
weeks.
the recording. After it takes a little while to download, and then if I know Jackie asked me for last week's, and if anybody else needs that, let me know. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.